I didn't like what I saw in crypto, in the stock market. And it's not the fact that it was down, it's just how it all happened. So I want to unpack that. My name's Matt. You found Team Bitcoin. Gonna do this in one take. Really tired. I bought a car today, and I'm going to talk about that a bit too. What happened? Why did we close red? I want to hear your comments. Tell me why we closed red. Why was Bitcoin down today? Because it shouldn't have been. Here's why. Here's why we should have closed green. Microsoft after hours had one of the best quarters I've ever seen. Azure was killing it. A company that large should not be growing like they are, but they are, and a big part of that's AI. Pre-market, they were up like $55 a share, but that ratcheted back. For the day, I believe they're up a little over 4%. Meta, same story, if not even better. Meta crushed it. They were up like 11% to close. And yet, it wasn't enough to cause the NASDAQ to close green. Why? Well, I'm going to break this down as best I can. We started out in April with President Trump telegraphing, this is what we're going to do with trade. Then he did something different, and it was far more extreme, and it scared everyone. So people started selling. That caused the market to go down. We hit a bottom, and then we reversed up into a V-shaped recovery. Best one I think I've ever seen. It's the most symmetrical thing, as well as probably the fastest one in history. But we've been hitting all-time highs every day. Boom, boom. I literally showed you a video where I made 30 grand in one trading session. Go back and check that out if you haven't. But that's the money I spent today on that car, which, again, getting me off track. Money's been too easy to make is what I'm really trying to say. And when everybody's making money, it's time to take a few chips off the table. That, in my opinion, is partially what happened today. The trade war deadlines thing happened today. So some countries are just getting slapped. And that's rattling the markets a little bit. Jerome Powell's a big one. Yesterday he came out and said, you know what? Rates are good. We don't need to cut. And kind of said, we're not even certain about September. We got to look at the jobs report. If you've ever heard him speak, he's data driven. If he doesn't have the data, he's not doing it. He doesn't care what the president says. And it's an independent agency. So, if he cuts too early, then we're going to have more inflation. But I don't see the harm in a quarter rate point. I'm starting to see small little cracks. I mentioned Starbucks the other day, missing Chipotle, missing Spotify, missing. That discretionary stuff where it's like, well, when people start having to cut back, what do they cut? Well, they're not going to cut gas out of their car, but they are going to cut services that aren't necessary if they absolutely have to. And we're starting to see that. Those companies aren't as profitable. Furthermore, Bitcoin, we went from 80 to 90 to 100,000. And we've been turning around at each level. And then 110, we're at 120. Well, now we pulled back a little bit. I actually think that is a good sign. We need this before we can head back up again. We need to exhaust the sellers. We need to shake out the leverage. We need to stabilize a little bit. But I think really what's pulling that down is going to be the stock market because I see it bending over. So we'll see what happens. The president, he has inked some deals. We're starting to look at what the goal is, which is about 15% tariffs. That long term, I think will have a positive effect on stabilizing our bleeding that America is doing with our national debt. Long term, there's things that I think are very positive, but in the short term, in my opinion, Bitcoin's going down. Let's look at where it is right now. Okay. Now, again, top, down, 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 down. NASDAQ did about the exact same thing. Market closed and we're grinding around. So we're pre-market down tomorrow. I would expect Bitcoin to follow that move. 112? Probably tomorrow would be my guess. I don't know. Just a guess. That's what it really is. Now, this article just came out. It basically said Bitcoin price bleeds as Galaxy Digital unleashes 1.5 billion sell-off. Now, although that sounds like a very large number, that's about 2 days of ETF inflows. So, it's all allotted all at once, and hopefully this seller starts turning off the spigot because I think he's got about 9 billion worth. So he sold, I don't know, what is that? a fifth. But these sales were triggered today, and I think that put a little pressure on the market too, as far as Bitcoin's concerned. So he had originally transferred 80,000 Bitcoin over to this exchange, and now the sell orders are triggering. And I go back to my same point. Why? Is there a better opportunity in altcoins? Possibly Ethereum, XRP? Like, what am I missing on this? I don't know. If you're in America, you're going to pay a lot of taxes. I know that much. Next up, this is sad when I see stuff like this. An alleged Bitcoin torturer walks free on $1 million bond after a 2-month basically detention. Now, with this happened, 1 of 2 suspects accused of torturing an Italian millionaire in New York who suspectedly had $100 million worth of Bitcoin was basically bailed out of jail on $1 million bond. Both men are accused of kidnapping and torturing this Italian crypto trader. Wow. Prosecutors said the pair kidnapped this guy, tortured him over the course of 3 weeks in a townhouse or townhome. Not cool. Not cool at all. I don't know what's wrong with people. I really don't. Wow. Protect yourself, right? If you're a crypto gazillionaire, if you mine this stuff, it's probably best to be in the shadows. Don't let people know who you are, because you get crazy people like this, and guess what?